All right, let's kick things off with a little thought experiment. Are you ready for a quick game?
Oh, absolutely. I'm always up for a good challenge. Lay it on me.
Perfect. So here's the first scenario. Pretty simple. I offer you two choices. Option A, I just give you $500. Guaranteed it's yours.
Okay.
Or option B, we flip a coin. Heads, you get $1,000. But tails, you get nothing.
Yeah.
Zero. What's your gut telling you? What do you pick?
Hmm. The $1,000 is tempting, but I think I'd take the $500.
Yeah.
Feels like the safer bet, less risk involved.
Right. And most people, instinctively, they go for that sure thing, the $500. Okay, now let's flip the situation entirely. Let's make it about loss.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Imagine you've just been hit with a $1,000 fine. Ouch. Not great,
Definitely not.
but I offer you a way to deal with it. Option A, you just pay $500. That's it. Settled. No more, no less.
Mm.
Or option B, we flip that same coin. Heads, you pay absolutely nothing. The fine disappears. Tails, though, you have to pay the full $1,000. What's your moves this time?
Oh, wow. Okay, that feels completely different. Now that it's about losing money, I'm like really, really tempted to flip the coin.
Really? Even risking the full 1,000?
Yeah, even with the risk of paying the full $1,000. It's strange, isn't it? Because the numbers, they're kind of symmetrical to the first game, but the feeling, totally different.
And that right there, that feeling, that switch, that is the fascinating human mystery we're diving into today.
It is fascinating.
You just made two profoundly different decisions in what are, financially pretty much symmetrical situations. And it's not about being irrational, not really. It's about being wonderfully, complexly human.
Right. For centuries, maybe longer, economic theory was built on this idea of the rational agent. The belief that humans always make decisions based purely on logic, trying to maximize their gain, their utility, especially with money.
Yeah, like we're all just walking calculators.
Yeah.
But turns out reality had other plans. It was really two brilliant psychologists, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, who properly shook up that old economic view.
They did. They conducted these really clever experiments, a lot like the coin flip scenarios we just played out. And what they discovered fundamentally shifted our understanding of how people actually make decisions.
What did they find?
Well, they found that people consistently played it safe when there was a chance to gain something, but they took remarkable risks, sometimes huge risks, when faced with a potential loss. Their choices weren't always logical in that strict economic sense, but they profoundly followed emotion, fear, hope.
And this groundbreaking work led them to develop prospect theory. It's become a cornerstone of behavioral economics, hasn't it?
Absolutely. At its core, prospect theory explains that our decisions aren't based on the absolute final outcome, the total wealth we end up with. Instead, it's about how we perceive gains or losses relative to a specific reference point.
A reference point, like where we are right now.
Exactly. Our current status quo. It's all about the change from here.
And the most pivotal concept within prospect theory, the real heavy hitter, is loss aversion.
Yes, this is the big one. It's the idea that the psychological pain of losing something is roughly twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining an equivalent amount.
Twice as powerful. Wow.
Yeah. So losing $500, for instance, often feels far, far worse than gaining $500 feels good. There's an asymmetry there.
Okay, let me try and picture that.
Yeah.
Like, think about finding a $100 bill on the street. That feels pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Nice little boost to your day.
Yeah, definitely.
Now imagine you had $100
Yeah.
and you drop it on your way home. You lose it, that same amount.
Oh, that sinking feeling. Ugh, it lingers, doesn't it? You replay it in your head. It feels disproportionately bad compared to the good feeling of finding it.
Precisely. That profound emotional imbalance is why prospect theory is so significant. It reveals that for all our talk about rationality, we are, at our heart, deeply emotional decision makers.
Mm-hmm. And once you grasp this concept, you really start seeing its fingerprints everywhere. From how marketing messages are crafted, how products are sold.
Like how?
Well, think about sales emphasizing what you'll miss out on if you don't buy now. Or in finance, why people hold on to losing stocks for too long. Even in politics, how campaign ads focus on potential losses under the opponent. It's in our voting choices, how we approach relationships, leaving or staying. It's everyone.
Hey, let's unpack this. There's clearly a lot here. All right, let's explore another really intriguing facet of this, how our decisions get shaped. I have another scenario for you. Another game, if you will.
Okay. Given our last game, I'm guessing there's another psychological twist coming.
You know me too well. Okay, here it is. Imagine you're a doctor. You're confronting a new deadly disease. You have 600 patients relying on you, and you have to choose between two treatment options.
Okay. High stakes.
Very. Option A, this treatment will save 200 lives. For certain. Guaranteed.
200 saved for sure.
Option B, there's a 1/3 chance, 33%, that all 600 patients will be saved. But there's a 2/3 chance that none will survive. Which treatment do you recommend?
Wow. Saving 200 for sure versus a gamble. In that situation, the certainty of saving 200 lives feels, well, it feels far more responsible. I think I'd have to choose option A. Lock in those saves.
Okay. That's a really common choice, and you can absolutely see the logic, the responsibility there. Now, let's consider the exact same medical situation. Same disease, same 600 patients, same outcomes possible. But I'm just going to present the options with slightly different wording. Ready?
Okay, I'm bracing myself.
Option A. If you choose this treatment, 400 people will die, for certain. Option B. There's a 1/3 chance that no one will die, but a 2/3 chance that all 600 will die. How does that feel now? What's your choice?
Wow. Okay. That hits completely differently. The numbers are identical, right? Save 200 means 400 die. 1/3 chance save all, 2/3 save none is the same as 1/3 no one dies, 2/3 all die. But the emotional impact, hearing 400 people will die, triggers a much stronger, almost terrifying reaction compared to 200 people will be saved.
What are you leaning towards now?
This time, honestly, I'm actually leaning toward option B, the gamble. It feels like avoiding the certainty of 400 deaths is worth the risk. It's amazing how the wording changes it.
That, right there, perfectly illustrates the framing effect. Your choice shifts, maybe dramatically, not because the underlying facts changed one bit, but purely because of how those facts were presented, the frame.
So my brain isn't just processing objective data, is it? It's heavily, heavily influenced by the language, the context, the frame. That's astonishing, really.
It truly is. And Kahneman and Tversky, they famously demonstrated this in a paper back in 1981. They show that even highly trained professionals like doctors, policymakers, people you'd expect to be purely rational and data-driven, we're just as susceptible to this framing effect.
So it's not just some, intuitive quirk for everyday folks. It's a systemic bias that even experts fall prey to. Even Nobel Prize winners like Kahneman could probably be tripped up by the right frame.
Exactly. And you see this everywhere in daily life once you start looking for it. In marketing, political debates, media headlines especially.
Right. It's like preferring yogurt labeled 90% fat-free over the exact same yogurt labeled contains 10% fat.
Perfect example.
Same product, totally different psychological appeal, just based on the framing. One feels healthy, the other feels less so.
Precisely. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? How many of our decisions, big ones and small ones, are subtly guided, maybe even manipulated, by the way information is packaged and presented to us?
It really underscores that we don't always perceive an objective reality. Instead, we often interact with a version of reality, one that's been shaped by the chosen words, the tone, the context.
And this ties directly back to what we talked about earlier, loss aversion.
How so?
Well, when information is framed in terms of potential losses, like 400 people will die, it activates that powerful negative emotional response much more strongly than when the identical information is framed as a potential gain, like 200 people will be saved.
Ah, okay. So the loss frame hits that aversion button harder, that underlying bias again. We just hate losing more than we love winning.
Exactly. And those who understand this framing power, well, they wield significant influence. Advertisers, politicians, lawyers, they consciously use it to guide our decisions.
Yeah.
Because if you can shape the frame, you can often shape the outcome.
That's slightly terrifying. So maybe a new habit for all of us should be to always pause and ask, okay, wait, what's the frame here? How else could this be presented before making a judgment or a choice?
That's the spirit. That's becoming aware. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Oh.
Because understanding why we have such a deep gut-level aversion to loss, well, that might illuminate not just our individual decisions, but perhaps even bigger patterns in human history and evolution.
Yeah.
So far, we've really explored how deeply we seem to hate losing, that visceral feeling. But now comes the bigger question, the one that really gets under the skin. Why? Why is the pain of losing, say, $100 so much more intense than the joy of gaining that same
It
$100.
feels so universal, doesn't it? You see it across different cultures, different demographics. So is this simply hardwired into us? Is it some kind of evolutionary leftover?
Well, Richard Thaler, another giant in behavioral economics, certainly thought so. His explanation, which sometimes gets called the caveman theory, suggests it's rooted deep, deep in our evolutionary past. Survival instincts, basically.
Right, I can kind of see the connection forming there. Back in the wild, for early humans, a single misstep or a significant loss.
Mm,
Well, that could easily mean the difference between survival and not surviving. Extinction for you or your group.
exactly. Paint a picture. An early human, maybe tens of thousands of years ago. They might stumble upon a new cave. Maybe it looks like it promises better shelter, maybe more abundant food sources nearby. Sounds good, right?
Yeah, potential gain.
But moving to it carries a huge risk compared to the safe, known cave they already occupy, even if the current cave isn't perfect.
And that new cave, who knows what's in there? It could hold unknown dangers. A hidden predator like a snake or a big cat, unstable rock. Maybe it floods in bad weather. The potential for loss, losing safety, losing resources, maybe even losing your life, is immediate and incredibly high stakes.
So the thinking goes, our ancestors who were more cautious, the ones who prioritized avoiding loss above chasing uncertain gains, especially those potentially life-threatening losses, were simply the ones more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass on their genes.
Okay, so that ingrained mindset, that powerful don't lose what you have warning system, got baked into our biology over millennia, and it's still active in our brains today.
That's the theory. It's still firing away.
So my brain is essentially treating losing, say, $50 on a bad investment with the same kind of alarm bells it would use if I were being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. That seems disproportionate.
In a modern context, it absolutely can be. Even though our lives today are filled with decisions that aren't physically life or death, financial choices, career paths, relationship decisions, our brains often still activate that same primal emotional warning system. Danger. Protect what you possess. Don't risk it.
Wow. That's a profound insight. It really helps explain why people sometimes cling so tightly to bad investments long after they should sell or stay in unsatisfying jobs or even remain in unhealthy relationships. It's not necessarily about maximizing happiness.
Right.
It's about avoiding the perceived pain of losing what's familiar, what they already feel they own, even if it's not actually good for them.
Mm-hmm. And this specific phenomenon related to ownership is known as the endowment effect. We tend to irrationally overvalue things simply because they belong to us. That mug you own is worth more to you than an identical one you could buy.
Right. Even if holding on to that stock or that job or that thing is actually dragging us down in the long run, the fear of loss keeps us stuck.
Precisely. Because loss aversion isn't merely about money or objects. It taps into really fundamental human needs. Our sense of identity, our need for security, for control, our ancient brain circuitry screams, don't let go. Even when our rational mind might know that letting go is the smarter, healthier path forward.
So prospect theory didn't just point out that we're often irrational, quote unquote. It provided a really compelling explanation for why we behave that way. It completely shattered that long-held classical economic assumption that humans are purely rational agents, always optimizing.
Yeah, that old economic religion, as some called it. For centuries, the models just assumed we made choices with cold, calculated precision, like robots optimizing for the perfect outcome every single time.
Clearly, those economists never tried to make a complex life decision while they were really hungry or stressed out.
Right, exactly. Prospect theory exposed that illusion. We are not calculators. We are emotional, we're intuitive, we're wonderfully messy human beings. And our decisions, especially those connected to potential loss, seem to be guided far more by these deeply ingrained fears and emotions than by pure, detached logic.
And yet, maybe that very fear, that instinct to protect what we have, isn't always detrimental. You hinted at this. Perhaps it actually served, and maybe still serves, a vital purpose beyond just keeping us stuck.
You're touching on the next crucial point, the twist in the tale. Because coming up, we're going to explore exactly that. How this seemingly irrational loss aversion can actually be a powerful protective mechanism in some surprising ways, and also how that knowledge is sometimes deliberately wielded against us.
Okay, I'm ready. My wallet is still bracing itself, just in case.
So far, we've largely painted loss aversion as, well, maybe a bit of a barrier, right? Something that holds us back from selling those declining stocks or leaving unfulfilling jobs or taking those brave leaps into the unknown.
Yeah, it certainly fosters a kind of natural risk aversion, doesn't it? An inclination to hold on to the familiar, the status quo, rather than venture out where things are uncertain. But you're saying there might actually be a beneficial side to it, a bright side.
There absolutely is. And it's not just some minor quirk, it might be really significant. Loss aversion, for all its potential downsides, can also act as a vital built-in emergency brake. It could stop us from rushing headlong into danger or making truly destructive choices.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example where this irrationality, this fear of loss, actually serves us well.
Right. Let's think big picture for a moment. Let's consider environmental issues. For a long time, traditional economic thought often pushed for endless growth, maximum extraction, maximum consumption, basically maximizing utility at every turn.
Right. Grow the economy, use the resources. That was the main focus.
But what happens psychologically when we start to witness widespread environmental losses? When we see images of rampant deforestation, accelerating climate change effects, plastic choking the oceans.
We begin to experience genuine alarm, don't we? A sense of panic, even.
Yeah.
It stops being just about abstract ideas of maximizing more resources. It becomes a tangible fear of losing something fundamental that we already possess and depend on.
Like what?
Like clean air, potable water, biodiversity, a stable climate, a habitable planet for ourselves and future generations. The fear of losing that feels very real.
Exactly. That's loss aversion kicking in on a massive scale. And here's the unexpected, potentially hopeful twist. This deep-seated human tendency, this powerful fear of loss, might just be the most potent psychological force capable of motivating us to prevent overconsumption and the destruction of our own planetary home. More potent, perhaps, than just appeals to future gains. Whoa. So you're saying the same psychological bias that makes me reluctant to part with an old, comfortable pair of jeans I never wear or hang on to a struggling investment too long? That same bias could be the very thing that motivates me on a gut level to turn off a running tap or choose to cycle instead of drive or drastically reduce my plastic consumption because I fear losing a healthy environment.
Bingo, that's the potential power of it. Loss aversion flips the script.
Yeah.
It can move us beyond a relentless, maybe unsustainable pursuit of more, to a more fundamental, protective understanding of don't lose what profoundly matters. That's a really powerful reframing. So perhaps this fear of loss isn't just a glitch in our system. Maybe it's nature's inherent mechanism for reminding us, urging us to safeguard what is truly essential for our long-term survival and well-being.
And this is precisely where prospect theory, I think, truly shines brighter than those older, traditional economic models. While standard models might assume we'll always chase the biggest potential gains, the reality prospect theory reveals is that we often fight hardest, most passionately, to hold on to what we already cherish and value, to prevent loss.
So maybe the focus shifts. It's less about utility maximization in the abstract and maybe more about value preservation, protecting what genuinely matters from being lost, whether that's personal relationships, community well-being, or environmental stability.
So what does this all mean for us, navigating our lives? It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? What we might have initially viewed primarily as a human weakness, this profound, sometimes irrational fear of loss, could actually contain the seeds of wisdom. It might function as a kind of built-in moral compass.
A moral compass.
Subtly guiding us, if we listen carefully, toward potentially wiser, more sustainable, more connected choices in life.
Loss aversion, our human glitch. Or maybe, just maybe, our deepest wisdom. Makes you think.
So here we are then, at the conclusion of this particular deep dive. We've journeyed quite a way, haven't we? From those simple opening coin flips all the way to the potential implications for saving our planet.
We really have. And I think we've uncovered just how profoundly human and maybe less rational than we thought we truly are. How that fear of losing something often shapes our choices far more powerfully than the simple hope of gaining something new.
And how this single core idea, loss aversion, nested within prospect theory, completely turned that old notion of purely rational decision-making right on its head. We are these cold, calculating machines after all.
Nope. We're emotional, we're cautious sometimes, we're prone to biases. We're beautifully messily human.
Yeah.
But perhaps that's not entirely a flaw, as we just discussed, because this fear of loss, this intrinsic protective mechanism, it often serves us incredibly well, too, doesn't it?
In what ways? Remind us.
Well, it fosters loyalty in relationships. It encourages carefulness and prudence when facing real dangers. It can inspire empathy for others facing loss. And as we saw, it can motivate us to safeguard the values and the things, tangible or intangible, that we hold dear.
Though, it's also true we have to acknowledge the flip side. It can also hold us back sometimes.
Yeah.
Right? It can keep us from taking that necessary leap, from embracing a needed fresh start, or from letting go of something or someone when it's truly time to move on.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
like having a wise, cautious old friend who occasionally gets overly anxious and panics for no really good reason, but whose underlying caution has, at other critical times, genuinely saved your life or kept you from making a catastrophic mistake. It's a double-edged sword.
That's a great analogy. Exactly. And that's precisely why understanding this deeply ingrained pattern within ourselves is so incredibly empowering. It doesn't mean we can eliminate it, but it gives us that crucial space, that moment to pause before reacting impulsively based purely on fear.
Yeah, a pause to reflect.
It lets us consciously ask ourselves, okay, wait, am I making this choice because it's genuinely the right one for me, for my growth, for my values? Or am I leaning this way simply because I'm afraid of losing something, comfort, familiarity, status, whatever it is?
So here's maybe our final challenge, our final thought for you listening right now.
The next time you find yourself at a crossroads, feeling stuck between playing it safe and taking a calculated risk, maybe between holding on tight and truly letting go, just pause for a moment, take a breath, and ask yourself this really profound question.
If I weren't afraid of losing, what would I do?
Just sit with that for a second. If I weren't afraid of losing, what choice would emerge? Because that question, asked honestly, might just cut through the noise. It might reveal your most authentic, resonant decision, shining brightly right past the fear.
That's a powerful question to carry forward. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. If this exploration resonated with you, maybe sparked some insights, please consider sharing it with a friend who might also find it interesting. Or connect with us on social media. We always appreciate engaging with curious minds like yours.
And as always, stay aware of these forces within you, stay grounded in what truly matters, and definitely stay curious.